All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion today. I'm so excited to be here with one of my fabulous mentors and teachers, Lee LaBay. And we are going to have a conversation about a specific therapeutic topic, a thing that she actually created, a technique for hypnotherapy. And that's actually called reverse metaphor. So we've all heard of probably a metaphor before, and Mary Lee's going to talk about what the reverse metaphor technique is about and how it can help us as coaches, as healers, as self-healers to be able to learn more, to get some more in-depth insight from our subconscious minds. So Mary Lee, thanks so much for being here with me today. It's so great to have you. I am going to tell everybody a little bit about you, if that's okay first, and then I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. So Mary Lee has over 35 years of experience in hypnosis and holistic and spiritual development. She's been a certified instructor for over 25 years, offering credentials in things like hypnotherapy, past life regression, and holistic and shamanic techniques for deep and sustained wellness. Mary Lee has served on the board. She's a past board member of NGH Washington, that I'm current president of, and she has a PhD in behavioral psychology. She's the author of 6 books on hypnosis, past life regression, and self-improvement, including Mastering Hypnotherapy, which is her latest hypnotherapy textbook, which we're all very excited about. It has a lot of these incredible techniques in it, so you definitely want to check that out. And she's currently offering trainings online for those of us who are passionate coaches and healers to incorporate her signature techniques in things like hypnotherapy, NLP, and other innovative protocols that you're going to learn about today into our practices to deepen our clients' experiences. And today she's actually going to be giving us some special bonuses for everybody who's watching. So Mary Lee, thank you again for being here. Would love for you to add anything you want to your introduction there, and then tell us a little bit about reverse metaphor and how it was created.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I can add anything to that wonderful introduction, except thank you for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to do any project with you, really. There's lots of different things we've shown up together, and it's always a pleasure. So reverse metaphor was one of the early techniques that I developed. And, my background, I was doing past life regressions since the mid 1980s. And then in 1997, I got my clinical hypnotherapy certification, a 300-hour professional course. And, well, first of all, we were trained to use scripts, and that's kind of a, for me, it was a stickler because we would have to do a very thorough discovery call, a conversation with the client, maybe even have one session where all you did was discuss the issue and their background and their favorite things and what they don't like. You'd have to have just a lot of background information on a client to use the script. And then you would have to go on your own time and look through tomes and, books of scripts, trying to find just the right script for your client for their particular needs. Or you would have to sit down and write a story of your own, integrating metaphors and the kinds of suggestions that you wanted them to hear. And then you would put your client into a deep state of trance. You'd have to test for levels, and then you would read them the script and bring them out, and then just cross your fingers and hope that it worked, right? And for me, I did that when I graduated. I employed that for, I don't know, just a few sessions, and I started realizing how time consuming, for one thing, but also how risky it was that you might incorporate the wrong thing, something maybe they have a fear or phobia of. Maybe your metaphor happens to be on the water and you forgot to ask them whether they were afraid of water, or you have them flying in an airplane and they hate to fly, or whatever. There could be a lot of things that happen in your story that they have an adverse reaction. So I felt very uncomfortable using metaphors or creating those stories, creating those metaphors, and putting the client under, and that the whole process just made me feel really uncomfortable. So what I was noticing as people would come into my office, they would be telling me metaphorical things. They would include metaphor in what they would be describing. They might say, I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders, or I have this stabbing pain in my back, or it feels like I have a ball and chain around my ankle, or I feel like I have a block in front of me and I can't move forward. All of these will bring visions to us, right? And so when I was saying those, you were probably actually envisioning what might be happening to my client, right? And so I thought, well, okay, they already have a vision, a story perhaps going on in their subconscious mind about this block or this pain or whatever's going on in their life. And why not incorporate that instead of me going off and trying to find the perfect metaphor or story to tell them? Why not let them elaborate on their own story? So I started asking my client, um, so let's say they have a stabbing in the back. So can you tell me more about the stabbing? Is it repeated? Is it, or is it just once? Or, what's happening there? What are they stabbing you with? Who's stabbing you? If you could follow the arm, like who is doing this to you? And so then from there, I started realizing that not only getting that description, but having them tell me the story. Okay, so what was happening before they started stabbing you? What was going on? And just give me a story, make up the story. But how is that playing out in your subconscious mind? What is that movie? And so they started telling me a story, and actually taking the kind of the still frame of stabbing in the back and making it more into a movie or a story that would unfold over time. And so as I was working with that, I was finding that they had the perfect story. And then we can go back and we can create this story of how can this be resolved, right? What's it going to take that object out of your back? What can you do to have that stop? And so then they would create a story that would actually include the resolution. And so then we had our answers. So that's really how it developed. And then I thought, wait a minute, nobody's teaching this. Nobody's writing about it. Nobody, I was never taught in my 300 hours of training, in-person training. Nobody was bringing this up to us. We were always told, go read a script. So I started formulating that into more of a protocol with instructions and all of that. And I first published it in Hypnotherapy, a Client-Centered Approach, which was published in 2003. So that was where reverse metaphor took its debut.
I love that. And I was wondering that if that's where it debuted, because like you said, you ended up creating these protocols for a more client-centered approach of not just reading the scripts, of really customizing that experience to the client. And I had very similar training, 23 years ago, where it was in person. They used it hundreds of hours, and there were a lot of scripts and things like that involved in that clinical hypnotherapy program. And I had that experience that you were talking about, actually, because as students, we first had to do inductions and then bring the person back out. And we would just do that for
Mhm.
quite a while before we were let loose with any other types of scripts and trying to figure out what we were going to do in the middle. It was like, okay, let's practice some inductions. And so I typically actually am a very good swimmer. I love water, but it was an ocean induction. And again, we didn't discuss it ahead of time. And just so happens, because as you know, my husband is retired Navy, and at the time, we were still dating and planning on getting married, and it was right after 9/11. It was a very emotional time, and he was out in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and I had a little bit of an emotional reaction to that ocean type of an imagery. And so, yeah, you never know what's going to happen when you are thinking, oh, I'm going to take them, on an elevator or in the ocean or they might have some fear that you don't realize, of something that happened to them or something that touches a little bit of a emotional spot in them.
Sure.
And
Well, and
so,
it could even be something that makes them sad. You
yeah,
might say, "Oh, and there's a little puppy that comes into the picture," and you think, "Oh, puppies and rainbows, how sweet." And they just lost their dog to a car accident or something, and they're like, "Oh, the puppy," and that's
uh-huh,
the response that you're looking for. In fact, it's, creating more trauma for your client than healing.
exactly. Yeah. So when we put our own imagery in there, we're putting a lot of our own judgments about things, about what we think the connotation is versus what it could mean to somebody else. And so it's great to really have these options of things to do to say, you tell the story, you tell me what you're imagining, you tell me, how does that feel and where did that come from? And how long has that been happening? And all of these more open questions of letting them tell a story versus me trying to say, well, imagine this, like somebody would in a guided meditation nowadays. They'll say, well, imagine this rainforest and this sound and this smell, and, this is what you're seeing. And that is really leading the clients
It is.
versus them having that ability to really let their subconscious mind lead them to wherever it needs to go. And that's what I love about reverse metaphor. You can use it in so many different ways if you are just, trying to figure out where to go with something or what that means. Like you said, there may be something that comes up like that knife in the back. I mean, how many times do we hear people say things like that? Like I feel like the weight of the world on my shoulders. People say those things all the time. It's like, tell me more about that. And then they can explain that to you. And I always think of reverse metaphor in a little bit of a comical way of like an old time, the original Disney movies.
Mm,
There's always a moral to the story.
right.
When my clients are telling me these stories in reverse metaphor, there's always points that relate back to their lives. There's
Absolutely.
always a lesson to be learned in there somewhere or some kind of wisdom that you're gaining. And so let's talk a little bit about when would be an appropriate time to use reverse metaphor, and how does that work as far as they're telling us the story, and then how do we figure out what the meaning is?
Okay, so for the when, I've used it as an induction. If I know that if my client can go into a trance fairly easily, that we've been working together, instead of taking time to do a formal induction, I can just ask them to close their eyes, relax, and begin to imagine a story. But usually at the beginning, before we enter into the reverse metaphor, we've discussed what the goal will be. So, I'd like to ask your subconscious mind to tell us a story, not a memory, but a fantasy story that will help us to understand whatever this issue is. Understand your relationship with your new boyfriend, or understand what will happen if you open that business. Whatever that goal is going to be. So I could use it as an induction. So I just ask them to relax, and we begin the reverse metaphor. And in doing so, as they tell the story, they're going to go deeper and deeper into trance. Another use for it is if they're really struggling to get out of their left brain analysis and into the right brain creativity. Whatever we're doing that is, maybe they're showing some resistance, and there's a problem getting into that creative side, or finding resourceful and creative answers to their questions or resolution to their problem. We can go into the reverse metaphor, and it will come out through the story. If they're struggling going into a past life regression, then I'll say, well, let's not worry about the past life regression. Let's start with a fantasy story, just to ignite your creative, imaginative right brain. And as they begin this story, you'll see that within a minute or two, they're in a past life. And there are ways to tell that they've gone from the story into a past life. So any of those times are really good to use it. Also, if they are really struggling to find a resolution or a pathway forward, we can do it as a reverse metaphor to get the ideas, to expand the options for that person. And then at the end, we would go and do other techniques to complete the work. The other reason I use the reverse metaphor is if we have a little extra time at the end of a session. So sometimes, before COVID, I was doing in-person sessions, and they were 2 hours long because I wanted to do more work and less of them driving back and forth to where I lived. And so we were doing 2-hour sessions. So maybe for an hour and 40 minutes, we were doing all this productive work, and, everything is resolved, and we have 15, 20 minutes left over. I don't want to just end it and kind of gyp them out of their time that they have allotted. So I would do the reverse metaphor, and it could be something light and fun, or it could be that what is coming up from their subconscious mind would tell us what we should work on next week, what the next thing is that would be good to work on. So a lot of different, so you could end the session that way as well. So it can just be employed anytime. And then also, you could really do a reverse metaphor as the whole session. So now my sessions are an hour over Zoom, hour and 15 minutes over Zoom. So still, if it feels like something is unfinished, we can use the reverse metaphor to help us to maybe dig a little deeper and to, bring up some other answer or some other factor that is playing into this issue that we need to address. But like I said, you could also use it for a full hour. So, you'll spend 5 minutes in the beginning discussing what you want to work on, maybe 5 minutes of an induction, deepening, getting them into that space. And then you'd have about 45 minutes to do the full reverse metaphor. And so it could be really luxurious, right? It could be a really full interesting story. So the other part of your question was, how do we know what it means? So
Mhm.
when you're doing the reverse metaphor, let's say you have 45 minutes to work, I would want to end the story at about 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes. So give the majority of the time to the story so you can really explore. But while you're taking notes, uh, instead of just writing your notes like you normally do, I would write them on different lines. So if the person says, I'm walking along a path, it's a dirt path, and it's very narrow, that would be one line. To the right are tall pine trees. That's the next line. And so each detail that they're giving you is on a separate line. So at the end of the story, when it's completed, you'll go back to the top of your notes and you'll tell your client, now, in your story, you began by telling me that there was a narrow dirt road. What in your life is like walking a narrow dirt road? And then next to that, you can write their answer. So you'll have the entry, and then I put a dash or a slash or something, and then you can put the meaning of that.
Mhm.
As they're giving you the meanings, you want to make sure that they're not just giving you another metaphor, right? Like, oh, the tall pine trees. That's like wise people that come into my life that support me. Okay, but who are those wise people that come into your life? You
Mhm.
want to get it really down to what they can identify in their life. Oh, it's my parents and this one teacher that I have. Okay, so then that solidifies that more as a resource for them. It brings it down, not just a metaphor for another metaphor, but really bringing it down um, grounded into this life and correlating it also to the issue. The road is, downhill, and then it's very steep uphill and a lot of twists and turns. How does that relate to the issue that we're talking about today? So you want to bring it back to that issue, and have them explain that. And by the end, you can just tell the light bulbs are going off and they've learned so much and are so thrilled with this new level of understanding their own, you know, subconscious workings and the answers to their questions.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that, again, it's where they're telling you what the meaning is. We're
Yes.
not reading into that ourselves. They are coming up with those answers from within. And that's why it's so powerful. And so, such a great technique because sometimes, it's challenging. Like you said, we can't come up with those answers from our conscious mind. We have to allow our subconscious mind to speak its language with that imagination and creativity. And sometimes, if somebody's a little more analytical, it's a little more challenging for them to do that. This is such a great way to exercise that creativity and that imagination and to allow it to just flow so that then those things can be revealed. And then they can go back afterwards and analyze it and go through each piece and say, oh, yeah, that logically makes sense because it connects here. And so it allows them to just let that part of their mind just be calm and relax for a little while. And then they can utilize that strength when they're complete with the story. So I think that's such a great thing that you said, yeah, if you just want to do that for the session, you can. Or maybe if they're having a harder time relaxing into that creative space, it's a great tool as well. And I do the same thing you do now because when we first started working together about 5 years ago, I was doing the same thing with those longer sessions pre-COVID. And then, yeah, and now same thing on Zoom. Typically, yeah, like you said, about an hour and 15 minutes. That's usually what I'm doing too. And so this is such a great tool, whether you do have just 10 or 20 minutes at the beginning or the end, or if you just want to go ahead and say, well, let's see what's revealed and
Exactly.
tell the story. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can direct the subconscious mind to a degree in that I'll tell them, I'll say, if I know that my time is limited, I'll
Yeah.
say, I would like to ask the subconscious mind to provide us with a story and metaphor that will help us to understand whatever this issue is. And I'd like you to deliver that message within 5 minutes of our story. And it will, the whole story will take 5 minutes. And so, and then we can go back and interpret what the message was. But it's interesting because it will comply if you just simply let it know what you need. We've got 10 minutes. Give me the story in 5 minutes, and it'll do that.
Yeah,
The
it's
other,
amazing when you work with clients long enough and their subconscious knows what time, how much time you have left, and you can just tell them like, okay, so is there anything else that needs to be addressed? And this is how much time we have. And yeah, they're pretty good at keeping time. And like I said, the more you work with someone, the easier it is for them to go deeper. And
yes.
and then they do kind of have that sense of timing as well. So that's always nice.
Yeah, I was just thinking there's another use that I have, or another benefit of using the reverse metaphor, and that's when clients come in and there's a topic that they are really nervous about talking about. Maybe they feel shame around it. It could be abuse, it could be sexual activity, abuse, or their promiscuity, or whatever. But there's something that, and I've had people say I was the first person they ever talked to about a certain topic, that they've held this for decades inside of them, and this is the first time. And one of the really elegant ways to do that, if you get a sense, well, there's more here, but they're really not ready to share, or are feeling inhibited in sharing, you can have them just tell a story through reverse metaphor. And I had this happen where a young lady was sexually abused and had not ever shared that with anybody. And we were doing a reverse metaphor. And at that point, I didn't know that this was part of her history, but we were in the reverse metaphor, and it all started unfolding, but it was unfolding as a story kind of about somebody else, right? It wasn't her, but it was the story unfolding in metaphor. And at the end, she started opening up and talking to me really in direct language then about this event that had happened, or this series of events. And she said, I've never told anybody, but I think what kind of cracked her open and made her comfortable was by telling this story as a metaphor first. There was a part of her that was like emotionally, I suppose, that was feeling like, I've already unloaded this, right? I've already exposed this story. And then she just started talking about it in regular language, right? And putting herself in the middle of that story. But it was a really good way for her to convey that and to kind of step down into being able to discuss it, instead of kind of plunging in and being really uncomfortable. So
Yeah,
it's a beautiful way to allow people to express things like that.
yeah, that's a great point. So I obviously know all of the wonderful benefits of your trainings. So I would love for you to share with anybody who's watching who might be a coach or a healer of any kind. I know you have a lot of different people from different professions who take your courses. So I'd love for you to share kind of who are your programs for?
Well, they're really for anybody, but they are targeted for people who would like to become a holistic healer or coach. So we have a lot of coaches, a lot of healers, massage therapists, naturopaths, acupuncturists, I've had dentists, police officers, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health counselors, all walks of life that want to be able to help people. It's also really good for teachers, and I would say parents. If I knew this when I was raising my young children, they would have had an entirely different upbringing. There would be the reverse metaphor. You could tell them stories on their way to sleep. You could have them make up stories where you could understand their inner workings and what's going on with them. They could reveal that through stories if they don't really want to talk to you about that. Um, it, Things about disciplining and everything all the way through those years would be such a different experience instead of just giving commands and sending them to their rooms, or whatever. There would have been a different conversation. So it would have been good for parents too, or it is good for parents. So the training is 120 hours, and it's all online except for 20 hours. So you can learn at your own pace in the comfort of your own home, and you can access the course anytime in the future. So if, in a year or two, if you want to come back and say, now, I kind of forgot about this one technique, let me review that. You can come back and you can review that. And then there's 20 hours of live support calls. And I know you've been on a few of those rounds, Jody. A lot of the students are allowed to repeat those series of calls anytime in the future at no additional cost. So a lot of my graduates will come through the course, and then they'll continue to do the calls because they feel that they learn something new every time. There's always new people, so new discussions, different questions. Right, Jody?
I always learn something. Absolutely. I love being on the calls, and I will be on this next round as
Yes, in
well.
October.
Absolutely. I have it marked in my calendar because it's great practice, so that's important to be able to see those skills demonstrated and to be able to learn and ask and answer questions. Always helpful for our learning. And yeah, it's such a great experience to be together with different people, different perspectives, and to hear from you. Sometimes there's new things that you are putting in there that you'll say, oh, well, this isn't in the program, or this isn't in the book. This is something I've been doing with my clients. And so I love being there to learn in that aspect. And it is such a great program because you can start anytime, and you can go through the online course and then jump on those live Zoom calls as well.
Yes. So you get support from me and the other students forever. So support from me anytime when you have questions. People will still email me or jump on the calls or something. And then we have the Facebook page. It's a private group that is the Soulful Hypnotherapy Community. And so all the students are any that want to, that are on Facebook, that want to be a part of the group, are there. And so people can come on. You can post questions. You can ask for practice partners. You can add information, like if you see an interesting article, you can post it. If you have events or milestones, you can allow us to help you celebrate. So it's a really nice community. And so within the course, you're going to learn all the fundamentals of putting a person into hypnosis, the safe space, the empowerment symbol, which is another one that I've created that empowers your client right from the beginning. And different steps that we go through, and then the merging part at the other end. So the basics of hypnotherapy, but in the middle there, you're going to learn over a dozen different healing techniques. And these techniques are going to allow you to treat pretty much anybody for any issue. Now, we draw the line if they have been diagnosed with mental health problems that really need to be addressed by a psychiatrist, that sort of thing. But we can deal with really the general issues that people are coming up with, from trust issues to addictions, pain, relationships, sexual dysfunction, childhood abuse. Um, I can't even think of all the things, but
So
it's just a wide range. You'll never, you'll be, it's unlikely that you will ever have to turn a person away because of the issue that they bring you. You will have the techniques to help them and to support them.
absolutely. Yeah, there's so many things that we can help people with, and it's incredible. And the training for, again, that client centered, that I can't
Yeah.
stress enough, right? Again, it's not just looking up a script. It's not, telling anyone, what to do or how to think or how to behave. It's really helping them find those answers from within themselves. And that's why I think it's so effective. It's that real and lasting change because it came from inside them. And so we're just really guiding them with all of these tools and techniques on creating that change from within themselves, coming up with those solutions from their own subconscious mind. And so that is not going to have the type of resistance if you're using someone else's words.
Right.
You're doing that in the client's own words.
Exactly. In fact, I've trained a lot of people that were trained in that classical way of using scripts. And then they come into my program because they're so frustrated and feeling incompetent with the training that they had. And then they come into my program and they say they just feel liberated, that this is an entirely different way of approaching hypnotherapy, and it's free flowing and organic, and you can just relax. Once you learn the protocols that I teach you and you've practiced them and you're feeling, pretty confident with that, you can just relax through the whole process, through the whole session. You're not trying to read the right script and find the right thing to happen next. I'm on a lot of the hypnotherapy Facebook groups, and I see these questions coming in from people who've obviously been trained elsewhere. And they're like, does anybody have a script for this? And I have this client and I don't know what to do next. And all these things. And I'm thinking, where did they get trained? Because
Mhm.
in my training, you would have all those answers. You would have those capabilities of handling these questions and handling these issues, and not be searching for somebody that might have a good script for you. Uh, yeah, you'd be working just with the imagery that your clients would be handing you. So,
Yeah, so
yeah,
much more customized. There's no one size fits all solution for someone. And I love in your community, like you were just saying, those aren't the types of questions that people ask.
no,
People look for practice partners, or they'll ask questions like, which techniques have you used with this
right,
particular issue or challenge? And then they know what to do.
right.
It's more of those types of ideas than, how do I, take this one script and try to apply it to this one client, because it's not always going to work for
No,
everyone.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just so stressful. You and I both know this because we were originally trained that way.
Mhm.
It's just a lot of stress, but I try to help my students get away from all those things that are creating stress, and really enjoying this profession. And the reverse metaphor back to that is one of the key uh, techniques and foundational protocols that you'll use in your sessions And it's so generative and creative
Mm.
and healing for people. So
It truly is. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for sharing all of that with everyone. And so I know I'm going to put the link up to check out your programs. And you had a special savings for my audience today. So do
yeah,
you want to share about what
yeah,
you're offering?
yes. Actually, until I believe it's August 10th, I have a special going on. I believe it's August 10th, where it's 30% off of the training.
Mhm.
And the special secret code is Big Deal 30, all caps, one word. She's got it up on the screen. That one is going to end, I think it's the 10th of August.
Mhm.
On the 15th, we are initiating our um, early bird savings. And so it'll be 25% off for a week or so at that rate. But to get the 30% off, you want to do this one right now. It's not advertised on my website. And like I said, it's going to end, but big deal 30. And then, especially for Jody's people, so if you come in using her affiliate link, and or if somehow that doesn't work, you tell me that you came because of Jody.
Mhm.
I am going to drop ship you a copy of my latest book. Let's see if I can get this centered. Mastering Hypnotherapy. It's a huge book. It has everything in it. It's an amazing resource for you. And you'll get a copy of this.
Fantastic. I love that. And I was just requested, Faith is watching. Hi, Faith.
Oh,
Um, yes, so to put that in the Facebook chat. So I am going to go and do that right now, Faith. So just hang on for 1 second and I'll get that on there. It's not wanting me to do it on here. So I will go ahead and put that in there on the Facebook chat. So I'll make sure that under everywhere this video goes, that there will be my affiliate link as well as that discount code so that you all can access that. And I'm so glad that you were watching, Faith. And yes, absolutely. Faith already has been trained in hypnosis, but in a different method, like we talked about. And she also does Reiki. So Reiki healing. So it would be a great fit. You're right.
absolutely. Yes, I'd love to welcome you into my classroom, Faith. Do
Yes,
it.
absolutely. Right. Yeah, because there have been Reiki healers, massage therapists. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. What are some of the other professions of people who've been attending the classes?
I've had artists take the class and they wanted to combine it with art therapy.
Love that.
Um,
Yeah.
what else? We've named a lot of professions.
Hmm.
People that come out of IT, a lot of people are changing careers. They got burned out in IT, or they're, unhappy doing whatever it is they're doing, and they wanted a real change. And they said, or they have shared with me, I feel like it's more my calling to be a healer than to be doing this other work. And so, what is beautiful about hypnotherapy, and especially the client-centered way that I present it, and the tools that you're going to learn, is that, like Faith, you could be doing Reiki or massage or all these other things, and this is like the glue that holds it all together. So when I was teaching this course at Bastyr University, Bastyr is a premier school of graduating acupuncturists, naturopaths, health coaches, everything in the holistic health arena. And a lot of those students were coming through my course because they said, we'll get to a point, let's say in acupuncture, we're treating the client, and I just know that there's an emotional, psychological issue behind this that we have to clear. The same with people, dietitians. people who are trying to help people with their food and their nutrition, naturopaths, and they're using the hypnotherapy to help their clients get past, whatever resistance, whatever subconscious block is in there. And so they're adding it like Faith did, adding the hypnotherapy there. But people will come in even as a change of career path, and I suggest they start with the hypnotherapy, have that under your belt. And then if you want to do music therapy, or you want to do singing bowls or Reiki or any of these other avenues, you've got this incredible solid foundation, and you can already be working while you're studying all those other things. You can be working as a hypnotherapist and a past life regressionist. My certification course gives you 2 certificates, one as a certified hypnotherapist and one as a certified past life regression specialist. So you get those 2 certificates, you can be working, and then still, if you want to go into herbs or nutrition, or you want to specialize in diet or quit smoking or addiction control, or I have students now who are specializing in, I guess, hospice care, but helping people bring the babies into the world, and helping elderly or people who are dying to transition out of this world. So with the past life studies, that also supports being in those caretaking fields as well.
And that's how we met. Is I had a friend who had studied with you at Bastyr, who was a nutritionist and then hypnotherapist. And so that's how I learned all about you when I had moved to the area and sought you out. And Faith actually does work with people who are dealing with dementia. And she just said doulas. Yeah. So birth doulas, death doulas. Mm-hmm.
That's the word. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And so, like you said, any of the, physical health has, the CDC says at least 85% of physical health conditions have a psychological component. As we know in the work that we do, that it's at least that, if not more. And so, anyone in any of those fields, any of those helping and healing professions, I think this would really benefit them. So thank you for coming on and sharing. I will share that code one more time. And like I said, the link will be everywhere this video goes, so they can look for that. Of course, message either one of us if they have questions. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. It's always a wonderful experience whenever, like you said, we work together on anything. And so thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and guidance today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for hosting me, and have a lovely day. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you for all your attention and time.
Yes, thanks everyone for watching. Take care, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.